Good evening, I'm James Ezimoha and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. India launches strikes on Pakistan in Operation Sindoor, while Islamabad vows response. Papal conclave now in progress, while faithful await the outcome. Ukraine and Russia trade drone strikes as airports in Moscow forced to shut down. Thank you for joining us. Indian drone and airstrikes have reportedly hit multiple locations across Pakistan and Pakistani-administered Kashmir. Islamabad says 6 Pakistani sites were targeted, though none were said to be militant camps. The strikes have caused civilian casualties and significant damage to infrastructure.
According to Pakistan's military spokesperson, Indian missile strikes and artillery fire have killed at least 31 people. 26 in the missile strikes and 5 more along the line of control from artillery fire. Scenes of devastation unfolded in the eastern Pakistani city of Muridka overnight, following reported Indian drone strikes. Residents of Muzaffarabad, the capital of Pakistan-administered Kashmir, described the impact of a strike that destroyed a mosque shortly after midnight, sending panic through the hillside residential neighborhood. Fire started to spread. We came out for a while. Then there was another explosion and the whole house shook. Then we all got scared. Then we evacuated the house, taking the children with us. Pakistan has condemned the strikes, describing them as a violation of its sovereignty. Officials claimed that Indian missiles hit multiple locations and asserted that 5 Indian aircraft were shot down, though this has not been independently verified.
So we are giving our armed forces, the ground forces, the air force are giving all the necessary responses to defend the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Pakistan. And so far, I can confirm you that 5 Indian aircrafts, including 3 Rafale, 1 Su-30 and 1 MiG-29 have been shot down, and 1 Heron drone has also been shot down. The information that I have so far with me now, this is near Bhatinda in India, in Akhnur, and there are other locations also. As the information keeps on coming, I'll keep on updating.
Meanwhile, Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, speaking at a news briefing in New Delhi, said India took what it described as preemptive action following an attack on 22nd April. Indian police and medics reported that at least 7 civilians were killed and 30 others wounded in retaliatory Pakistani firing and shelling at multiple points along the line of control, the de facto border that divides the disputed Kashmir region between the 2 countries. The confrontation has also affected civilian air traffic, with flights to and from India rerouted to avoid Pakistani airspace, as shown by real-time tracking data. Several airports in both countries were temporarily closed as a precaution. This escalation is one of the most serious since the 2003 ceasefire agreement, which was reaffirmed in 2021. While limited skirmishes have occurred over the years, targeted strikes deep into Pakistani territory, especially outside the contested Kashmir region, remain rare.
As fears of a wider conflict grow, global leaders are urging both nuclear-armed nations to show restraint and return to dialogue.
The operation, named Sindoor by India, sparked a sharp reaction from Islamabad and said it is now responding to what it called unprovoked aggression. The international response was swift, with world leaders expressing growing alarm over the escalating tensions. US President Donald Trump called the situation a shame, noting that the long-standing rivalry between India and Pakistan has once again reached a dangerous point. They've been fighting for many, many decades, he said, adding, "I hope it ends very quickly." Echoing the president's remarks, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said he is monitoring the situation closely and reaffirmed Washington's commitment to engaging both sides in search of a peaceful resolution. The United Nations also voiced deep concern. The spokesperson for Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, Stefan Dujarric, described the Indian military operations as deeply troubling. He urged both countries to exercise maximum military restraint, warning that the world cannot afford a military confrontation between India and Pakistan. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi strongly condemned the initial terrorist attack in Kashmir and expressed concern that this situation may lead to further retaliatory exchanges and escalate into a full-scale military conflict. He urged both countries to stabilise the situation through dialogue. The United Arab Emirates also called for de-escalation. Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed said, "We must avoid further escalation that could threaten regional and international peace," emphasising the need for diplomacy as the only path forward.
Tensions between the two nuclear-armed neighbours are at an unprecedented high, as Hira Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
In the early hours of Wednesday, India carried out 3 missile strikes. According to Islamabad, the strikes targeted civilian areas, including mosque compounds in Pakistan-administered Kashmir and areas in its Punjab province near the Indian border. In response, Pakistani forces claim to have retaliated with full force through an ongoing military operation as both sides trade fire along the line of control, the de facto border dividing the region of Kashmir. The growing hostilities have prompted authorities in Pakistan to place hospitals and security forces on high alert. India, on the other hand, maintains that its actions were non-escalatory and specifically aimed at hitting terrorist hideouts within Pakistani territory, a claim strongly denied by Pakistan's army. Islamabad insists that no terrorist infrastructure exists on its soil and that India deliberately targeted civilian areas, a charge New Delhi has denied. In response to the escalating conflict, Pakistan has convened a high-level national security meeting involving top military officials and federal ministers to assess preparedness and determine the next course of action. Regional and international experts warn that continued confrontation between the two nuclear-armed neighbors could spiral into a broader conflict unless global powers, including the United States, China and Russia, intervene to help de-escalate tensions. While India and Pakistan have fought 3 wars in the past, experts argue the current situation is the closest they have come to the brink of a wider conflict in recent years. Hira Mustafa, A News, Islamabad.
According to Pakistan's armed forces, one of the targets of India's strikes on Wednesday was a hydropower project. Indian officials also announced that they would stop water from flowing across its borders. Joining us live from Islamabad, Pakistan, is Gaiser Nawab, chairman of the Belt and Road Initiative for Sustainable Development. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How would you assess the impact of the recent military operations and armed clashes on regional connectivity?
So the recent escalations between India and Pakistan is deeply concerning, especially as it involves the direct 24 strikes on civilian areas within Pakistan at 6 different locations. What makes this situation particularly alarming is the violation of international norms and deliberate targeting of non-military zones, tragically resulting in the loss of 26 innocent lives, including women, children, and elderly people, and many are injured, and the destruction of a mosque, which is against the violation.
Now, what is the current water situation in Pakistan? Are there alternative options for supplying water to the regions that are under threat?
So the current water situation after the Indians' unilateral suspension of the Indus Water Treaty that was negotiated by the World Bank in 1960, this has created a severe problem for Pakistan, particularly the province Punjab, which is the Pakistan's food baskets. And you know that the crop season is coming soon, and it's already a crop season. And wheat and all these cotton cycle is in the process, and there is a severe need of water that will ultimately result of food security in the region. And previously, that in a very public rally, the former Prime Minister very diligently and bravely mentioned that either the blood will flow or the water will flow in the Indus River. And I think this criminalization of the nature of the river is something that is beyond the understanding of today's modern world and, of course, the humanity. And this water treaty that has already been very much valid even during the previous wars. And currently in this age where we are already facing the climate change and, of course, climate issues. And by this violation, India's way of terrorism is something very new in the modern world. And Pakistan definitely will respond to that. But what happened yesterday night was something that one should also emphasize under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, that we fully reserve the inherent right to self-defense in response to the acts of aggression. And Pakistan Armed Forces responded to this unprovoked assault with professionalism and precision, which targeted only military assets to ensure the minimal civilian impact in India. The destruction of these multiple Indian aircraft you must heard in the news, including Rafale, this is a French technology, air jets, and this Sukhoi jets was not only an act of retaliation, but also a measured and lawful act of deterrence, meant to preserve peace and protect national sovereignty. And the same will also be answered in the way of the water treaty as well.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having us.
The conclave to choose Pope Francis' successor has begun, with 133 cardinals gathering at the Sistine Chapel. Following its closure, attention now turns to the chimney, which serves as the Vatican's way of communicating the conclave's progress. A white smoke signals the election of a new pope, who will then appear on the balcony to greet the crowd. If the smoke is black, it means no candidate has secured a two-thirds majority and a new pope has not been elected. Now moving on to the papal election. Joining us from Lisbon, Portugal is Felipe Alviles, a religious affairs expert. Thank you for joining us. Can you briefly walk us through the processes that follow the election once a new pope is elected?
Well, once a candidate has obtained 2/3 of the vote, he will be asked to, if he accepts, that's the first point, obviously, it can't be forced on anyone. And once he has accepted, he will swear an oath that he will serve the papacy respectfully. And then we go through a phase in which the new pope is taken to a room called the Chapel of Tears. By this time, white smoke will have emerged from the chimney. And because quite often the smoke, even when it's white, is actually grayish and is difficult to discern, especially if with the naked eye, bells will ring in from the Basilica of St. Peter. And so the bells are really the sign that we're looking for if the smoke is not clear. And after the Pope has some time of prayer, he will be vested in his new white vestments. Then the cardinal, who is the proto-deacon, so this is the oldest cardinal in the order of deacons. There are 3 different orders of cardinals. Of course, the cardinal is a bishop, like almost all the others, but it's the name that is given to his rank. He will come out onto the veranda and he will announce, I announce a great joy, we have a new pope, and then he will announce the pope's name. Now, the pope's name is always announced with his surname first, and then his birth name. Sorry, the other way. First his birth name, and then Cardinalis, and then his surname. Because of course most of us know him by their surnames, and so that we'll all be looking out to try and see if we can identify the name that is said. And only then is the Pope presented to the public and to the cheering crowds below, and he will give his first blessing. It's called the blessing Urbi et Orbi, a blessing to the city and to the world, and of course to all the faithful who are gathered below and to all those who are watching from home. And so that will mark the beginning of the new papacy. Great.
Pope Francis was a Jesuit. How has his background influenced the balance of power within the church, and what internal conflicts between different factions might still be hidden from the public?
Well, there are always differences of opinion. There are always different currents and different factions within the church, like there are in any other big organization. I wouldn't perhaps go as far as calling them conflicts, because that is a very loaded word. And now, of course, there are disagreements and different perspectives. I think the fact that Pope Francis was a Jesuit makes it perhaps more likely that the next pope will not come from a religious order. The cardinals can be rather skeptical of choosing a pope from a religious order because they will tend, because that's their background, that's where the people that they trust and know are as well, they will tend to surround themselves with people also from that religious order, and that can give the order more weight than perhaps other cardinals would like to see it have. So this is no guarantee, but it makes it slightly more likely that the next pope will not be from a religious order. In terms of balance of power, I think that we can reasonably expect that the next pope will not be a pope of rupture with Pope Francis's papacy. He will not backtrack on most of Pope Francis's main priorities, making it clear that the church is open to everyone and that everyone should find their place within the church. And then if they have things in their lives that are incompatible with church teaching, then they will try and see about that, but in the church and not outside the church, making it clear that the church's doors are open. That was something that to him was very important. Also, his grave concern for the periphery, what he called the peripheries, not only geographical peripheries, so the countries from around the world that usually are not in the media and usually are not in people's main preoccupations and concerns, but also social peripheries. So the people who live next door to us, who live by themselves, who are in solitude, who don't have anyone who they can turn to, who they can depend on. Those are the people also that Pope Francis wanted to shine the spotlight on. That's why he was so concerned with migrants, for example. And that's something that he really opened the eyes of the church to, the plight of the migrants, most of whom, as we know, and specifically here speaking about the migrants who are coming to Europe, most of whom are not from Christian or Catholic backgrounds. Many of them are Muslim. And so the Pope said that that's not an issue. The issue is that these are our brothers and we have to hold out our hand to them, and we can't just let them drown en masse in the Mediterranean, as has been happening, as if we don't care. So that was something that to him was very important. So I think the next Pope will have to carry on with these concerns and with this legacy. He will probably do so in a more sober style. Pope Francis's style, he used to say to young people, make noise, make a mess, and shake things up. But that's something that didn't sit comfortably with a lot of people in the church. And so I think the next Pope will probably choose a more sober style, and we'll see a return perhaps to a calmer, equally interventive, but more sober papacy in the next Pope. However, who that will be, we have to wait and see.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Russia and Ukraine reported deadly overnight strikes just hours before a proposed Russian ceasefire. Missile and drone attacks hit Kiev and Zaporizhia, killing at least 2 and injuring several others. Meanwhile, Moscow claims it intercepted Ukrainian drones for the third night, causing airport shutdowns.
Ukraine says Kiev was hit by a major drone attack early Wednesday. Falling debris from intercepted drones caused fires in at least 3 parts of the city. A mother and her son were killed when a drone struck a 5-story building in the Shevchenkivsky district. 8 others were hurt across the capital, including 4 children. The Dnipro district saw the upper floors of a multi-story apartment building destroyed. In Sviatoshinsky, 1 adult and 4 children were wounded. Additional damage was reported in the Dniprovsky district. In the south, 4 people were hurt in Zaporizhia after a drone strike caused fires and damage to several buildings, including the headquarters of aircraft engine maker Motor Sich. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that Russia launched over 140 drones and several missiles overnight, hitting areas across the country. He urged stronger international sanctions on Moscow. Meanwhile, Russia also claims it was attacked, with officials saying 14 Ukrainian drones were shot down over Moscow. This marks the third consecutive night of drone strikes on the city. It is also the second night in a row that key airports were forced to close for several hours, disrupting at least 350 flights. No injuries were reported. The Kremlin condemned the attacks as terrorism and assured that steps are being taken to secure the Victory Day celebrations. A military parade is set for Friday in Red Square, with nearly 30 foreign leaders expected. Russia says it will stick to its proposed three-day ceasefire, but will respond if attacked. Earlier this month, President Zelensky rejected the ceasefire, saying Ukraine couldn't guarantee the safety of those attending the Moscow parade. He called Putin's proposal a manipulation to protect the ceremony.
Germany has a new chancellor. Olaf Scholz officially handed over power to Friedrich Merz in a short ceremony at the Chancellor in Berlin.
In a formal but emotional handover at the Berlin Chancellery, Olaf Scholz passed the baton to newly elected Chancellor Friedrich Merz. The ceremony came just hours after Merz secured enough votes in the second round of parliamentary voting to officially take office.
I am very aware of the responsibility that this office entails. I accept this responsibility with humility, but also with determination and confidence, ladies and gentlemen.
Merz had failed to win a majority in the initial round earlier that day, a first in post-war Germany. Despite his coalition with the Social Democrats holding 328 seats, he received only 310 votes, 6 short. But a second round turned the tide. Merz gained 325 votes, enough to calm political nerves and ease market jitters. Germany's DAX index trimmed losses and recovered slightly by mid-afternoon.
Bis zum Abend passieren werde.
You can get straight down to business, just as the citizens of our country expect, just as these turbulent times demand. I wish you and your entire team every success, much strength and all the best. And thank you all very much.
Later that evening, Merz held his first cabinet meeting with his new ministers. From diplomacy to the economy, expectations are high as Friedrich Merz begins his term as Germany's 10th post-war chancellor.
Germany's new Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, says any security guarantees for Ukraine will depend on the establishment of a lasting ceasefire. Speaking during his visit to Paris, Merz emphasized that Germany can't make commitments until there is a clear work frame for peace negotiations. He also said the responsibility for ending the war lies with Moscow and expressed hope that a ceasefire could be reached. The Chancellor also revealed plans to visit Ukraine in the coming weeks. Germany must show unity after its new government faced a shaky start due to divisions within the coalition, according to political analyst Klaus Gotze. While the country has appointed its new leader, early setbacks have raised concerns about conflicting views within the government.
After a major setback, Germany selected its new chancellor, but the process revealed significant disagreements within the new government. Political analyst Klaus Goetz suggests that the government must demonstrate unity during this political shift, noting there is also discontent between the parties.
It's clear that there is discontent in both of the main parliamentary parties, the CDU-CSU, the Chancellor's group, and also the SPD, the group of the Vice-Chancellor Klingbeil. It is clear that not everybody is very happy with this coalition. That would be too much to expect, but there was no plan B, so yes, it was a surprise. Well, there are some people in the CDU-CSU who never wanted Merz as a leader of the party. As you remember, it took him several attempts to become leader of the party. He stood several times. He was never the favorite. Only last time did he actually manage.
The quick turnaround with the second vote helped Merz recover from an early setback, preventing a potentially damaging delay in forming the government. Goetz believes the quick vote prevented long-term consequences, saying that if it had taken a week or two, the situation would have been much more serious.
but I wouldn't overestimate the long-term consequences. I think if it had taken another week, or maybe even a fortnight before we had a second vote, that would have been different. Then there would have been a perception of uncertainty, and then I think voices would have grown in both parties. We need to rethink, and maybe we need to even look for another chancellor. But the fact that it was possible to put on a second vote a few hours later reduced the uncertainty, and now Germany has a new government. The Chancellor will be traveling to several European capitals on Wednesday and make other visits in the next few days. So I think, yes, there is a short-term irritation, but I wouldn't say there is long-term damage.
According to Geertz, the failed first vote could serve as a reality check for Merz, who may have assumed his success was certain. Merz fell short of the 316 votes needed in the first round on May 6th, securing only 310 votes. However, he regained his position with 325 votes in the second round after 18 coalition lawmakers withheld support.
We go now to the presidential palace in Baku, where our correspondent Orkan Amashov is covering a landmark diplomatic event. The General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam is on his first ever state visit to Azerbaijan. This historic occasion has seen the signing of a joint declaration on strategic partnership, along with several key agreements in the areas like defense, energy, and culture. Let's join Orhan for the latest from the scene.
Hello, I'm joining you from the Presidential Palace here in Baku again. Today, the General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Socialist Republic of Vietnam is paying a state visit to Azerbaijan. It's the first visit of this kind. We remember that since 1992, when these nations established diplomatic relations, there have been a couple of important visits, but we haven't had a state visit. President Ilham Aliyev himself was in Vietnam back in 2014, which was a state visit, but in 2015, when the President of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam visited Azerbaijan, that was an official visit. So it's a moment of diplomatic delicacy and accuracy. And today the countries signed a very important document known as the Joint Declaration on Strategic Partnership, which actually upgrades bilateral relations between the two nations to a completely new level. The relations have always been very constructive and very plausible and positive, and actually they, in terms of their essence and roots, stretch back well before Azerbaijan regained its independence back in 1991, going back as far as 1959, when the president of the then Democratic Republic of Vietnam visited Soviet Azerbaijan. And today a couple of documents have been signed. They relate to a number of issues, including defense, energy cooperation, transport, infrastructure, science, culture, and many other matters. And actually we had an opportunity to see those documents being exchanged in front of eyes. And the General Secretary of the Communist Party mentioned about his own invitation that was extended to Azerbaijani president, and it is quite likely that the Azerbaijani president's visit to Vietnam will take place at some point very soon indeed. Of course, this visit is taking place at a very important and interesting juncture, taking place against a backdrop of important developments. President Aliyev was in China just a few days ago, and that their strategic agreement, actually called Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement, was signed. And Vietnam is also a country which is operating in an incredibly difficult and complicated geopolitical atmosphere, forging very close ties with US and China, and also fulfilling this function of diplomatic geopolitical balancing act. And President Aliyev, during his remarks, mentioned about trade in particular. I think earlier there was no figure mentioned, but in his interview given to the news agency of the Vietnam, he mentioned the total turnover being around $223 million, which is a significant figure, not a gargantuan one, of course. And President Aliyev, during his remarks today, mentioned that, of course, preponderant part of that trade volume is actually attributable to the oil exports of Azerbaijan. And when oil exports go up, that figure also naturally goes up. And there is a need for actually diversifying all the landscape involving the trade exchange between two nations. Orkan Amashov, A News.
President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev will not attend Moscow's 9th May Victory Day parade, as confirmed by Russia presidential aide Yuri Yushakov. Several factors are believed to have influenced this decision. Relations have been strained due to Russia's lack of cooperation in the investigation of the downing of Azerbaijani plane in December 2024, which led to the death of 38 people. A cyber attack on Azerbaijani media, allegedly originating from Russia, has further complicated ties. Additionally, a recent diplomatic incident where an Azerbaijani MP was denied entry to Russia despite an invitation has added to the tensions. Azerbaijan and Iraq have held high-level talks in Baghdad. Iraq is now looking to import Azerbaijani gas, while both sides discussed closer political and economic cooperation.
Azerbaijan and Iraq are looking to expand cooperation across a range of sectors, from energy and politics to humanitarian efforts. Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov met with his Iraqi counterpart Fuad Hussein in Baghdad, where Iraq expressed interest in buying natural gas from Azerbaijan to meet growing electricity demands. Hussein said Iraq wants to diversify its energy sources and start talks on gas imports. He also invited Azerbaijani companies to invest in Iraq's energy sector. Bayramov and Hussein also discussed regional security, including stability in Syria, the situation in Gaza, and rising tensions between India and Pakistan. Later, Bayramov met with the Speaker of Iraq's parliament, Mahmoud al-Mashhadani. The talks focused on boosting interparliamentary ties and long-term political dialogue. Both sides stressed the importance of building stable, respectful relations, rooted in historic friendship and shared regional interests.
Iran and Azerbaijan are moving to strengthen their bilateral ties. Following recent high-level visits and multiple cooperation agreements, both countries are signaling a new phase in regional cooperation. Here's more on the developing relationship between Tehran and Baku from our correspondent in Tehran, Turaj Shiralilu.
Iran and Azerbaijan have decided to further develop their relations, according to Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Saeed Khatibzadeh. Khatibzadeh, who was visiting Baku 1 week after the state visit by Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, in an interview with Trend news agency said that Iran wants to establish a unique developments in its existing relations with Azerbaijan through regional cooperation. President Pezeshkian visited Baku on 28th of April, and during his visit, both countries signed a number of memorandum of understanding on trade and economic cooperation, as well as on political coordination. Mr. Khatibzadeh said that regional and international processes can provide an opportunity for further Iran-Azerbaijan relations, this time through regional agreements and regional cooperation. He said that following the peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, there are new perspectives emerging for better relations and improved relations between Iran and Azerbaijan. The Deputy Iranian Foreign Minister was visiting Baku on an invitation of the Center of International Relations Analysis. During his visit, both sides signed a memorandum of understanding on academic cooperation and on joint projects. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
Armenia's territorial integrity is inseparably linked to the territorial integrity of its neighbors. This statement was made by Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan during a question and answer session in Parliament, where he responded to accusations of provoking the 2020 war with Azerbaijan. The claims were made by former Armenian President Robert Kocharyan and Serge Sargsyan during an event at an Armenian National University. Pashinyan dismissed the accusations, calling the approach disrespectful and stressing that he was the one who made the decision for Armenian government to formally recognize the territorial integrity of the Republic of Armenia by acknowledging the territorial integrity of its neighbors.
I don't know how many times I have to stand here at this podium and address the political twin of Robert Kocharyan, Serge Sargsyan, who, as early as 2018, declared from this very platform that we should prepare for war. I've read enough on this topic, so you go ahead and speak. In other words, Serge Sargsyan declared from this podium that the negotiation process had effectively entered a military phase. And I also want to remind you that the four-day war in 2016 did not formally or legally end. No documents were signed to conclude it. Additionally, I want to recall the discussions held here about preventing war, including Robert Kocharian's earlier approaches like the Megri for Karabakh exchange proposal, the Madrid principles, and so on.
In Greece, Armenian Defense Minister Sorin Papikyan held talks with his Cypriot counterpart Vasilis Palmas. The meeting focused on boosting defense cooperation through joint efforts and closer military coordination. Regional and international security issues were also on the agenda. The day before, Papikyan met with his Greek counterpart Nikos Denviesh and attended the opening of the International Defense Exhibition, DEFER 2025. NATO explained that Secretary-General Mark Rutte's 2024 report omitted Georgia and Ukraine's membership goals to focus on key priorities. The omission does not indicate a policy change and reflects the evolving security situation in response to a question from Interpress News. Commenting on the recent developments in Georgia, a NATO official voiced growing concern among member states over the country's political shift. NATO also reaffirmed its strong support for Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity within internationally recognized borders. Earlier, the alliance suspended 5 of 17 joint projects with Georgia under the NATO-Georgia Substantial Package. Tourism leaders from across the D8 Organization for Economic Cooperation have wrapped up a high-level gathering in Cairo, marking a major step toward strengthening collaborations across member states.
Tourism leaders from across the D8 Organization for Economic Cooperation convened in Cairo on Tuesday for the 4th ministerial meeting on tourism. Hosted by Egypt, the high-profile gathering concluded with the official presentation and adoption of the Cairo Declaration. The D8 organization, which includes 9 countries, Azerbaijan, Bangladesh, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Malaysia, Nigeria, Pakistan and Turkey, continues to position itself as a dynamic force in the global tourism sector, emphasizing economic and cultural integration. Delegates in Cairo reaffirmed the shared vision of tourism as a cultural engine for socio-economic growth. Building on the outcomes of the 2023 summit held in Durban, Pakistan, the ministers focused on enhancing tourism infrastructure, supporting small and medium enterprises, and forging stronger public-private partnerships. One of the key highlights of the newly adopted Cairo Declaration is its emphasis on artificial intelligence. Recognizing AI as a transformative tool for tourism and heritage preservation, the document calls on member states to responsibly incorporate AI technologies into national strategies, share expertise, and maintain robust governance standards. The declaration also proposes joint cultural initiatives, the production of tourism-focused documentaries, and the creation of a digital platform to promote traditional crafts and locally made products. These steps aim to amplify the visibility and appeal of D8 destinations globally. To enhance cross-border travel, member countries agreed on the importance of facilitating visa procedures while respecting national regulations. And in a celebratory move, Turkey's coastal gem Antalya was named the first ever D8 Tourism City of the Year for 2025, recognizing its excellence in hospitality and sustainable tourism practices. Looking ahead, the Cairo Declaration commits D8 members to annual ministerial and expert-level meetings to track progress and shape future strategies. In a key follow-up move, Iran will host the first D8 Tourism Investment and Promotion Forum in 2026, as mandated by the declaration.
The second International Turan Film Festival has come to a close with a spectacular awards ceremony held under the theme Kizil Elma. The event was organized in cooperation with the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism, the General Directorate of Cinema, and the International Organization of Turkish Culture.
The second International Turan Film Festival took place in Turkey's Izmir, celebrating the cinematic expressions of the Turkic world. Supported by the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism and organized in cooperation with Turksoy, the festival aimed to highlight the shared cultural values and artistic talents of Turkic states and communities. Ege University Rector Professor Necdet Budak addressed the audience during the ceremony. Professor Budak stated that the festival was launched with the goal of strengthening the common values and cultural ties among the Turkic nations. According to Budak, the festival received 1,675 submissions from 80 countries. Among these were 324 films from Turkey, 32 from Azerbaijan, 17 from Kazakhstan, 13 from Uzbekistan, 10 from Turkmenistan and 7 from Kyrgyzstan. All entries were reviewed by expert juries and the winning films were selected after a thorough evaluation process. Turksoy's Secretary-General Sultan Rayev remarked that this year's festival showcased an even richer and more powerful content, reflecting the shared history and emotional bonds of the Turkic world on the cinema screen. At the conclusion of the event, Professor Necdet Budak presented awards to the films from Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkey, and Turkmenistan that were selected as the best by the jury.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.